So-called currency wars. With me now to unpick it all is our business correspondent Joe Lynam. So the battle lines are being drawn really at the moment, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Brexit. I think a lot of the ministers sitting around the table will be hearing a lot from the UK Finance Minister, George Osborne, about the impending referendum and the impact it might have not only on the UK, but on the rest of the European Union and potentially wider. If, for example, Britain is plunged into recession as a result of leaving the European Union, which the IMF believes it will, that will have an impact because it's such a large economy on the rest of Europe. So Brexit is definitely on the agenda. But you're never going to get 7 very different economies agreeing on the direction of travel.
Well, they're not in the same place to start with anyway,
Absolutely.
are they?
The Americans and the Brits are much further down the road than the Eurozone and the Japanese, for example. The Japanese have spent 3 or 4 years on Abenomics trying to pump prime their economy, and they are continuing to create money from nothing to try and stoke growth. The same in the Eurozone. It is starting to bear some fruit in the Eurozone, but a little bit further down the line, the Americans are talking about raising rates next month, potentially, or July.
Do you think there's a sense of frustration amongst some G7 members that others are not really cracking this?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always the accusation that the Germans are saving too much and not spending enough. This is a giant economy, the 3rd or 4th largest economy in the world. They could be stoking up things a lot more, but it's not in the German psyche to spend money when they don't necessarily have it. They want to balance all their budgets, whereas the so-called Anglo-Saxon countries, that's Canada, the United States and America, believe in borrowing to invest, i.e. continue to load up the balance sheet and add to the national debt in order to stoke up growth in future.
And what about these so-called currency wars?
Well, if you look at the Japanese yen, the weaker that is, the better it is for Japanese exporters. So it's around 110 to the US dollar at the moment. It was 125 around 6 months ago, so it's actually got a little bit stronger. That drives Japanese exporters ballistic. So there is talk about actively engaging in the market by the central bank in Japan to bring the Japanese yen down, weaken it so that they can sell their products internationally more. That drives the Americans mad, of course, because they don't think that's fair. They think the markets should decide the value of a currency and then they will trade according to that.
Joe Lynam, thank you very much indeed. Now, the train operator